Good evening. The News Gang is here tonight. News Gang at 3. Going strong 36 months later, and it's just the beginning. Also on the show tonight, the marathon, the sprint, Uhuru's parables from a new city. What is he up to? Fifth time lucky, or will it be? Raila's big announcement about the announcement. We take you inside the ODM leader's fifth stab at the top job. Plus, is Oka still okay? We'll take a look. On Yvonne's Take, a celebration about the Omicron variant. Long live Africa. The memo is a voter's guide to electing sensible leaders. On the kicker, lessons from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Can Kenya learn? The punchline is a cry for the Kenyan youth, while on the angle tonight, the county, the farmer, and the broken hearts.
Sio sprint, ni marathon. We utakimbia hapa, by the time umefika pale pumzi imeisha. Lakini mzee amekanyanga polepole akuja kupitia ukiwa bado kwa barabara. Tunaelewana wenzangu? Mos.
All right, President Uhuru Kenyatta speaking there from the newly inaugurated city of Nakuru, and we'll get back to that in just a moment. Let me acknowledge Yulan Zale, who is the 6th gangster here, our sign language interpreter for the night. Ladies and gentlemen, the President speaking about a sprint and a marathon, and talking about old people and young people. Linus, I don't know if you are the one who's going to translate the parables for us as we start the show. Oh, I should have said happy birthday for News Gang.
Yes.
Actually, that's a good place to start, isn't it?
Yes.
It's been fresh. It's been,
Tatu
10. Yeah, just so you know, actually, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
The actual birthday was on the 29th of November. So this show has been going on for 3 years, which means 3 years of the kicker, 3 years of the memo, 3 years of the punchline, 3 years of Yvonne's Take, and 3 years of the angle.
Wow. Happy birthday, guys.
Happy birthday. Good stuff.
Happy birthday, guys.
Yeah.
And it is my actual birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you as well.
Oh, wow.
So the birthday boy then gets to start, hey?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think so. And I mean, a day after a new city also was inaugurated, quite a lot of things happening.
Quite a lot of new things. So give us the new ideas about your interpretation of the parables from Nakuru.
Very interesting, but it's a bit early to start interpreting things. They can come in bits and pieces. But the one thing that doesn't require interpretation is President Uhuru Kenyatta's discomfort with speed. And he has spoken about this before. We all know the origin of the word tanga-tanga. Remember when the president spoke about tanga-tanga, he actually did express a bit of frustration about how the deputy president was traveling around the country, going all over the place, and he said, "Mukimwona kitanga-tanga." You know, he's the one, and remember in Swahili, the word tanga-tanga actually is not very positive. It means walking around aimlessly. And then yesterday now he spoke about speed. Then there's something else that he said there that reminded me of what President Daniel Arap Moi said in August 2002 in Kilgoris, when he told Vice President then George Saitoti that uongozi na urafiki ni tofauti. And now here comes President Uhuru Kenyatta in under a year to the next election, and he's saying uongozi sio sprint. It's he even actually said, you know, he pointed at his head and said uongozi ni hapo kwa kichwa. But the first thing that the president will have to deal with is to convince his supporters that he is not the same candidate or is not the same politician of 2013 who was running on the platform of a youthful candidate. And so hawa ni wazee, remember the digital versus analog race. That is how the race was shaped in 2013 and a bit of it in 2017, that, you know, it's a race between old and new, and young and old. And this time, he is saying, no. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes long to actually actualize it. And it's also saying it's about the mind, it's substance. There are two things that should be taken out of that. First of all, it's very, very clear that once again, the president is not comfortable with his deputy. It's no longer in doubt that he is not the person he's looking at in terms of his succession that comes in August next year. And then, is he inching towards endorsement of Raila Odinga? If it walks like, what do they say?
Walks like a duck.
Quacks like a duck.
Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it is a duck. Because look at the treatment Raila is receiving in presidential functions, including the one in Nakuru. It's decent. He is treated as part of the of that particular team, and that says a lot. So I don't know whether there's much to interpret here.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, even today in Migori, it was quite interesting. I mean, seeing all these government functions, and is there an opening KMTC and something Sony and all of these things.
Modern Market,
yeah, almost to a point where you would ask, okay, as who? You know, that's the thing, because it's a government function. So as Lena says that, I mean, the doubt. You even wonder what it is we are waiting for to see the president do, because I think he's done quite a few things that really leave no doubt in our minds about what he's thinking. Yeah, and I was going to add, he doesn't have to say it outright, but his actions definitely speak something else. Just to, you know, what you were saying, that he was handing over KMTC to the Ministry of Health. He was accompanied by CS Dr. Mwangangi, PS Hinga, and alongside the Ministry of Health, he was handing over checks for pending bills. Would the president allow his senior government officials to accompany what is essentially an opposition leader if he was uncomfortable with this? I mean, this does not happen. And by the way, this is not the first time. I've recalled meetings that we have seen by the CEO of TSC, Nancy Macharia, who has made her way to Capitol Hill, and they're having meetings, and after that they have a press conference where they say, we're talking about, you know, the number of teachers in the country and how to make sure we beef up the numbers in schools. And this has been happening, by the way, for quite some time, since, you know, the handshake of March 2018. The president need not say much. The president need not say he is endorsing Raila Odinga, but his actions certainly say it loud and clear. I don't know what other signal anybody would be looking for.
And Lena's and had spoken about speed when the president spoke about the speed that the deputy president in his campaigns. It reminds me of the Bomas meeting when I think we had the first draft of the BBI report, and he talked about even really akasema umekimbia na sasa umechukua kijiti unarudi hivi, why couldn't you wait? So this issue about speed is something that has been the president's mind for quite a bit. And he said something that I think also we need to look at in terms of endorsing. Is he going to endorse him or not? When he said that he's going to personally hit the ground in campaigns himself at some point. Alisema kuna wakati itakuja. Will that be when he actually endorses probably Raila Odinga and says ni huyu? Will it be when he goes back home to central Kenya and says this gentleman is now good enough to elect, remembering what had been said in earlier elections about Raila Odinga in central Kenya? And ile kumi yangu, kumi ya William also still rings in people's minds. So when he goes back, and if he does hit the campaign trail, is he going out to say, this is the guy I want to endorse as a person who should take over this country? Because I think he wants to have some sort of control, not really control, but interest and in the person who will take over after him, or will he let it go completely and just walk away into the sunset alone without endorsing anyone? But then something else about the tone of when he was speaking yesterday, vijana, mnasikia, you know, he kept repeating it, mnasikia, sikizeni vijana. So I think that message for me yesterday was mostly to the youth, because he kept insisting, mnasikia vijana. And the youth, as we know, is the electorate that the Deputy President in his Hustler campaign has been going, targeting, actually telling them, this is your chance to lead. So I think for the President, he's slowly inching in my opinion, towards two things. One, maybe endorsing Raila Odinga, and second, completely now mentioning his deputy when he's talking about censuring him by mentioning names and not the way he's been implying and not directly mentioning him.
Gashuri must have been listening to some answers to those questions to raise in markets, in banana.
Yeah, I listened to the speech by the president yesterday keenly, and certain words were I found them very interesting to listen to from the president. Number one was the speed question. And I would think he was relating the speed, the marathon versus the sprint, to early campaigns. Remember, he has been critical of the deputy president and what he calls early campaigns by his deputy, actually bordering on calling him impatient. So I think the sprint versus marathon element was more about the early campaigns that the president has been talking about. And the marathon sort of discussion is that the presidency is a long process. It's a long haul, so to say, that maybe I would think marathons have, you know, you have to go through, you know, hills and valleys, up and down.
Pace yourself
and so on and so forth, as opposed to a straight line, which is a sprint. And by the marathon, I would probably think maybe you will require a lot of assistance from various quarters. You will require a lot of probably input from other players. And I would think that is what he was trying to contrast what maybe Raila Odinga's campaigns have been about and what the Deputy President's campaign have been about. I've seen responses from the Deputy President's allies saying that the President should not be so concerned about their speed because they intend to run the sprint to the end, to the ballot next year. Then the second question was the young versus the old. Not once, not twice, several times, we've heard the critics of the former Prime Minister say that he's old. He has attempted this presidential race 4 times. Now he's attempting the 5th time.
Yeah.
That he's a known rival, a known competitor, and so probably they have found ways of, you know, defeating him, that it will not be any different from next year's race. But on the other hand, the president now saying that it is not so much about age, but so much about content, you know, wisdom and so on and so forth. So without reading too much, I would think it sounded like a soft endorsement of the former Prime Minister from the president. There have been questions as to whether he will openly have a Tosha moment like we saw in 2002. Even if it doesn't happen, I would think the president will continue to throw these subtle kind of you know, signs of endorsement, and maybe a culmination of a few things probably he will say. I will not be surprised if he probably calls a meeting, let's say in Sagana or wherever, and maybe starts now discussing openly his relationship with the deputy president. Not so much about telling people vote for Raila Odinga, but more so like why you should not vote for the deputy president. And lastly, on the other hand, you will probably now see some more heavy combat directed at the president from the deputy president's allies, because sometimes you see them holding back, probably out of respect. Yeah. But the moment it gets to that level, it will now be bare knuckle.
And he was saying something. I think we can listen to the deputy president basically talking about wadosi wamemkasirikia, essentially answering the president in not so many words.
Mnajua mimi nashindana na hao watu wadosi wengi, na saa hizi wamekasirika na mimi. Ati mimi nimeenda kuchochea watu wa huko chini. Nimewaambia wanaweza kupata hii, wanaweza kupata hii. Ati huyu mtu angewacha kwanza tujipangie mambo ya viongozi, tupange vyeo, tupange mamlaka. Mimi nawauliza, mbona sisi tuko na ubinafsi kama viongozi? Tunapanga mambo yetu, tunasahau mambo ya raia. Kama mnasema tupange vyeo na mamlaka ya viongozi, siku gani tutapanga mambo ya wananchi jameni? Hata Mungu atatulaani kwa sababu ataona sisi ni watu wanafiki. Sijui kama tunaelewana.
Joe, among the Wadosi Wengi that the Deputy President is talking about, I would think one of the Wadosi Wengi is the President.
Of course.
The other Wadosi Wengi is the former Prime Minister.
The dynasty?
The
whole
deep
oak.
state,
Yeah.
the system, all those things. Those are the people that he's calling Wadosi Wengi. And the kukasirika is so much about the criticism about his style of politics, the political promises he's making. And the president yesterday alluded to them, that mtaahidiwa hii, mtaambua hii, and so on and so forth. So for now, it's, you know, those, you call it in boxing, sparring, eh?
Yeah,
but soon the gloves will be out.
But Linus, the framing there is rather interesting. I mean, and I think we've seen the Deputy President do this very well over the last couple of weeks, one would even say months, where he is saying basically that on the other side, they are trying to figure out how to share positions. And the reason they're upset with me is because I am fighting for you. I am fighting for the common person, for that hustler. That is why our Wadosi Wengi wamenikasirikia. A very interesting framing of this question, and in a sense, getting back at the president in not so many words.
It's demonstrated absolute fidelity to his hustler versus dynasty narrative. He's remained very faithful to it. This is how he shaped it in the beginning, and this is how he wants it sustained going forward. Look at his tone in Machakos. That's the tone of a victim. They are hitting me because of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not really about me. It's when I started talking about you that I started becoming a problem. Because remember, he has made this statement also about helping President Uhuru Kenyatta, helping former Prime Minister Raila Odinga in accessing or in ascending to power. And then when it becomes about you, then they are going...
They're fighting me.
After me. The DP structured this campaign as an us versus them campaign from the very beginning. Occasionally he changes depending on the heat, especially when the other side fights back and pushes about dividing people, about profiling certain leaders and families and things like that. And he would change that. But when you look at it, the structures remain the same. The frame is that of hustlers versus dynasties. And he still wants to run that race that way. He wants to position himself as the people's candidate. Here is the irony. And one of the newspapers, I think it was Sunday Nation, and before that even the Standard actually carried some analysis along those lines, that is he the new Raila Odinga? And that's a very valid question considering the style of his campaign. What William Ruto is trying to do now is to run a people-based campaign where it's actually the bottom-up approach this time when it comes to campaigning, so that it's about the common man on the street. How did Raila Odinga make his career? He went directly to these people. Remember when things went haywire in Thika Stadium when they were fighting for the chairmanship of Ford Kenya? Mm-hmm. It became a game of the ordinary people. Who can mobilize the youth? And remember, that is when now we started having this politics of heckling, politics of shouting at each other, because who will outnumber who in terms of mobilizing the youth in out-shouting the other. And that is what happened in Thika Stadium when Manasseh Kuria had to resign and say, I can't handle this, because it became a shouting match. That is the game as was designed at the return of multi-party politics. That is how you'll use the youth. That's how they'll propel you as the people's person. And that is how his career really started. He became the candidate of the masses, the candidate of the common man on the street. Now, William Ruto, especially in the second term of this of the Jubilee administration, completely went to that same direction. Now, when he says that we are going to the people directly, we are going to talk to the people directly, they are ones going to vote, they have the vote and all that. That is the politics that made Raila Odinga, and that is the politics that William Ruto is now trying to use to propel him to the presidency. But will it work? I think Raila Odinga has found out very, in a more direct way, that it doesn't work. You have to combine a number of factors. The top or the middle must be as comfortable with you as the bottom is. So if you are just the crowd persons, there'll be the business community that always asks big questions about what kind of administration is going to come up, what kind of president the country will have, and things, very detailed things that the ordinary folk doesn't care about. They don't know about the shares in the Nairobi Stock Exchange and things like that, foreign direct investments. Those are very, very complex things. Now, that is the game where William Ruto is currently not doing well. I always give the illustration of Safari Park. Raila Odinga tried to run for presidency by ignoring Safari Park 3-4 times now, by bypassing the so-called, they're called the owners of capital, the heart of the business community in Kenya. Can you really do that? Even though they don't have the numbers to outvote you, they have the resources to ensure that mobilization can work against you. So here is what has happened. I think I want to agree with the analysis in the newspapers that they have switched places. Raila has changed tack, and Ruto has also changed tack, and they have switched places.
Very, very, very interesting. I can see everybody moving.
Because
feel free to switch.
other than what was
I don't want to switch places because you've been bypassed.
Other than what was happening in Nakuru, the Raila, Uhuru, Ruto kind of a scenario, I've seen the ANC leader, Musalia Mudavadi, respond to it today, though in a subtle way but very significant way, when he talks about that speed question. And this is what he had to say.
If people are worried that the young people are running very fast, then they must wake up to the reality that the young people are tired of us going too slowly. Hatufanyi nini? Hatufanyi nini? The young people want to see results.
If you're in Banana, somebody would have interpreted that as we are not arranged. Hatupangwi, you know.
Gofagwo.
Yeah, Gofagwo. So the ANC leader is talking about that speed and in a subtle way responding to the president. And I would compare what he was saying to what he was saying, I think that last weekend when he was in Bungoma and Trans Nzoia, saying that they will not agree to be forced to support anyone, that they will not be waiting there to be picked, you know, and put in one coalition or the other. And if you notice in the last few days, quite some things have been said about him. An issue about tax arrears, the Anglo-leasing question is back. And so some of those things, you will see them in a way coming up, you know, like some constant reminders that, hey, there's still something somewhere. And I would think this is all part of political engineering, if you may like it. And the hardball that Musalia has been playing, especially against Raila, his allies have been doing the same. Initially, they were talking about it.
Now he's answering the president.
And he was not responding about it or saying anything about it. But today is the first time he's come very closest to, you know, outrightly talking about that particular matter. And probably before we go to the break, there's one of Musalia's allies who has been very heavy on Raila Odinga, that is Cleophas Malala. And today he was saying, he even went ahead to say how he thinks complicated Raila Odinga's political arithmetic is ahead of next year's general election.
Na ile pressure hao watu wako nayo ni kwamba unajua ile kura Raila alipata in 2017 karibu milioni 6 milioni 7. Ile hesabu wameanza kuhangaika nayo ni kwamba kura milioni 3 ya Waluya inatoka. Anabaki na kura ngapi? Milioni 3. Kura milioni 2 ya Wakamba inatoka. Raila anabaki na kura ngapi? Milioni 1. Ndio unaona wameanza kuhangaika. Kaa ngumu bana. Wewe kaa ngumu bana. We are on the right track bana. Hata former Prime Minister Raila Odinga ni mzuri kama anatusupport. Yeye akuje katika One Kenya Alliance, lakini ajue kwamba tushajipanga kule. Tuko na captains. Mheshimiwa Musalia ako pale, akikuja ajue kwamba kuna Captain Musalia, kuna Captain Weta, kuna Captain Kalonzo, kuna Captain Gideon Moi.
Joe and my colleagues, please keep that soundbite in some file folder. If any movements happen between now and February, March, please refer to it.
Did you say when? That's what you should say.
Between February and March, if you see any movements, we will refer back to that soundbite. Because I would think eventually there will be...
When
yeah,
we see the movement.
Yeah, because there obviously will be some movements of sorts.
I see what you're doing there.